Yeah. Oh, yes, he's vacationing in, for Disney. Yes. Alrighty, let's call meeting to order and approval of the agenda. Does anybody have anything to add to tonight's agenda? I have one item. It'll be new business B, and it'll be a discussion on bylaws review. And anything else, we will not have an in-camera session unless something came up. No? Okay, no in-camera tonight. So any, can we have a motion to approve that? If there's nothing else. Councilor Sereno, second by Councilor Goddard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion is carried. And let's move on to the approval of the minutes, March 25th. Does anybody note any errors or omissions in those minutes? Okay. Will be approved and circulated. And we'll move on to the action items.
I apologize, they weren't ready for the package. I will just highlight that this morning at the Remo Advisory Committee, they did discuss that Dan Stovall already does the 911 sign advertisement about monthly. He put something out to remind people that they should have these signs. And so just wanted to update on that. Oh, Lisa has an update on Valley Waste Reserve.
And KTA as well. I asked their director of finance for both. So with regard to the reserve accounts that they have, all of King's Transit's reserves are held in a high interest savings account. The value of that bank account is 2.2 million and change, of which 648,000 is considered Annapolis and Digby's. And he says the difference being the core partner funds. And for Valley Waste Regional Management, there are two reserve accounts. The equipment reserve from sale of capital assets is just over 282,000, which is held in a bank account. And there is an infrastructure reserve for the replacement of buildings, which is the 3.3 million and change, which is held in a low risk investment at Scotia McLeod.
Now, would you happen to know what percentage of their revenues that those may be?
Not off the top of my head, but I can certainly get that for you.
Okay, because generally speaking, reserves are set at something like 6%.
Possibly, could be six.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know.
Just for clarity, so, and this would build on the question that you've asked about whether they're adequate. So when you're saying adequate, you're thinking of the FCI. Okay, so we can do that analysis. They aren't required to go have those same FCIs performed on those organizations, but we can definitely do that quick calculation on where they fall with the FCIs.
Fantastic.
I thought you meant more about, is their capital plan funded
Well, yes.
adequately with reserves?
Yes.
But you mean more about what their FCIs are for both?
If they've got it there.
Okay.
Would they, if in the absence of them having any and them needing to call on the town,
Mhm.
how much risk would we be at? Would we have would they have it? Would those reserves they have be adequate to stop them from coming back to the town, calling for our additional reserves should something happen?
Okay.
So, yes. Basically, whatever the province is asking on a percentage wise or dollar wise.
And the way that King's Transit I know, is looking at their budget moving forward is building reserves to help pay for buses. But if they don't use reserves, then it would be through debt. which the towns would guarantee. And then you would pay that through operating. So that's how you would come back to the towns, is the risk is you're coming back to the towns through operating, increasing your annual contribution to cover the debt costs associated with those capital purchases.
I understand that. I just wanna understand what risk there is for us. That's it. Sounds like they're covered, but
To a certain extent.
to a certain extent, but you know,
Yeah.
calamity can happen and then reserves soon disappear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other updates or ones you wanna highlight there?
There's nothing else I wanted to highlight. I think everything else is good.
And any questions ever on any of them? No? Okay, let's move on to new business. So we have the information report there on the key transfer tax bylaw. And Lisa, are you gonna speak to that?
If there's potentially any questions, through budget, council had determined that we were interested in reviewing the percentage of D-transfer tax. So staff compiled comparable municipalities, to show what they've approved for, this fiscal year. Just to see the comparables, and then also included a table within the info report that shows what it was at 1%, had it have been, I think I did vote 5 years historically at 1.25 or 1.5, what the town could have received. And then a forecast for both 1.5 and 1.25 percentages. And staff is looking at council to provide some direction on what to prepare for first reading of the bylaw.
And we need to wait a week, right, once it's,
So typically under the MGA, you are required to give 7-day notice to council regarding any changes to bylaws and policies. And that can be just an email, but we thought tonight we would do that 7 days by providing this information report and getting requests from council on whether to have the first draft for first reading include 1.25 or 1.5% or other, I guess.
okay, any thoughts on this? So you can see where we were, and where the other municipalities close to us are. And then some of the number of scenarios there for the town, based on a couple of scenarios, 1%, 1.25, and 1.5. Councilor Davis.
I like the 1%, however. I do know that there is need and we had some plans to move that forward. I do know that, or I understand that the County of Kings just recently went from 0 to 1.5. Which they will find that to some of their residents a surprise in the future. I do know that when you're talking to realtors and dealing with transactions, that they do discuss the D-transfer tax as it applies to various towns. As they make suggestions for people to come to their towns. I'm not saying that I would oppose some increase, but I think there's some advantage to getting new people in town and new construction in town. And generally the first contact is when you're talking to the realtor, when you're talking to the lawyer, what's the deed transfer tax? So I'm sort of setting on the 1.25 if I'm looking at something.
Other councilors, comments, thoughts?
I just agree with everything Derek says. You took the words in my head.
And say, it's been an ongoing issue since I think we were probably the first municipality to bring it in a number of years ago, and there's been lots of conversation about what it should be, and I believe we were as high, were we as high as 1.5 at one time and then lowered it? Is that mentioned here?
I think,
We were,
I think we were actually at 2
so
when I moved here.
Can you go to both of them?
No, must have been 1.5.
Yeah, under the MGA, it's capped at 1.5%.
Then it was definitely
Yeah.
1.5%, yeah. Yeah. It didn't stop me from moving here, put it that way. But not everyone thinks like I do.
we did, that has been the concern before is, how many people are not gonna build in Berwick, or buy in Berwick because of the D-transfer tax. And not only were real estate people, but banking people were also dissuading people because of the, D-transfer tax. So we did a bit of a review pre and post when we first brought it in, and we found that there were really, and it's not a really scientific study, but there really was not a whole lot of difference in the number of sales before we had it and after we had it. It wasn't particularly proper study, and I don't know where that would be now, but
Just, I know from a customer service or inquiry perspective, the majority of questions or concerns we get, like, I think I've heard maybe one in the 3 years that I've been here about how much is your D-transfer. But it's more around the capped assessment coming off. That seems to be more of the inquiries that we're getting as opposed to the D-transfer piece of it. Even from realtors and lawyers to understand if it's a capped assessment and let people know when they're purchasing, which is nicer now that it's more common that they're communicating that. Now that prices are so significantly higher. Just need to share that we
Yeah.
really don't get a lot of inquiries internally.
okay, any other questions on the report? Because we'll call for a motion and then we can have some further discussion. Oh, yeah, right, we're not in council, we're just, yes, we're gonna do that at the next
Yeah.
meeting, right? With some direction as to what number we want to use to change the bylaw, right?
I'm agreeing with Derek. I think we should, if we're going to increase it, we should only go with 1.25% and it keeps us more competitive against our neighbors who have lower general taxes. You know what I mean? If we have a smaller D-transfer tax, that'll cut back on their initial cost, maybe get them in with our higher taxes. Just trying to be a little competitive, that's all. I think if we're all 1.5, 1.25, I know it doesn't seem like much, but gives us a little bit of a competitive edge.
How's the rest of the, we seem to have two leaning towards 1.25, looking for some feedback from the other two for correction.
I think it makes a lot of sense, and it's kind of like the carrot around the fact that, our taxes are what they are, and, we're trying to, like, we're doing everything we can to encourage you to be here. And I don't know, what does that do to our budget? Does it looks from the numbers that you have in front of us that's not going to have a negative impact on what we decided. Is that true?
So when we discussed increasing the D-transfer, it was essentially to allocate that portion into a transfer to reserves.
Mhm.
We just want to confirm what we had included
50,000.
in the budget. Did we do 50?
We went from 1 to 150.
I didn't carry it. So that essentially would
So
reduce
reduce our reserve
the
by,
potential.
By 25. However, if the extra people come into town as a
Yes.
result of it,
That's right.
Mhm.
It would
Good.
offset
you
that.
will offset that fairly quickly on a $400,000 transaction.
Correct.
Mhm.
If we increased it not at all, we would still see an increase in our income because of the value of homes keeps going up. So there is gonna be an increase anyway.
That's on home sales.
Like,
right?
yeah, every
Sales
time the value of a house goes up, we make more money when it's sold.
But you also have to sell as many.
Yeah.
So it depends on how many transactions and if they're all increased
Yeah.
values. So yes, you potentially could, if you sell the same amount of transactions and they're all valued higher, we could naturally hit that 150 without an increase to the deed transfer tax, but I guess there's no guarantee either way.
It's middle of the line is probably the way to go.
Okay, so if our direction then would be to, go for 1.25, but it doesn't mean that
First reading.
when we have our first reading, or at some point, we can't change it, or we can't change it again the next year.
Mhm.
So the plan will be to direct staff to bring forward the, a 1.25. Okay, we good with that?
Thank you.
Okay. So 1B is the new item, which is the bylaw review, and there's some interest by the members of the Police Advisory Committee to begin a process of reviewing some bylaws. So we're gonna begin today and looking at that, but thought it would be best tonight to kind of put some better understanding around that, who, when, what kinds of bylaws they're reviewing, how we may do that, what implications and how we begin for perhaps reviewing bylaws in general, from that may be related to other departments, and have some conversation on just moving this ahead. So I guess I can lead off with some conversations that Jennifer and I have had on what we see as maybe the best process, and we'll throw it out there and we'll have a conversation and then see where we go with that. And I guess from the initial thinking that if it's initiative from the Police Advisory Committee, it should go back to the Police Advisory Committee to have that conversation if they want to begin that process as the committee. And then identify perhaps those bylaws that would be related to that. And they could possibly work away at their Police Advisory Committees meetings where we have a staff person to resource it. We have the committee members coming together on a regular basis, or the basis of which they know they're coming together at their meeting basis, and pick away at those kind of bylaws at the speed that they can. So maybe you do one a night, maybe you do three a night, whatever kind of, once you get into the flow. So that was some of the conversation that we had, which then led to perhaps other committees would like to do the same if we can identify bylaws that are particularly related to community development, audit, accessibility, and would also include policies and bylaws, I guess, and work away at that level. So Jennifer, what did I miss? And then we'll throw it out and see if there's some conversation.
I don't think you missed much. I think the important thing though is that every time we have a bylaw or policy for review, that does require staff resources. So I don't want to say we can't do any, but we want to make sure that the number is reasonable. Because you might see one person sitting at a committee, but they are a support for 3 committees. So then that's 3 bylaws or 3 policies, and depending on the level of review that's required. One thing I've asked Krista to prepare is what that bylaw policy review process will look like, and what the checkpoints are for whether it's staff review. You know, there's a lot of bylaws and policies out there right now that there's model bylaws and policies, whether from other municipalities or from our Association of Municipal Administrators has them as well. So there's looking at what else is out there, there's legal review, there might be other legislation that we have to consider when we're writing a bylaw or policy. Sometimes that legal review needs to happen before it's taken to council or the committee. Sometimes it can wait and happen near the end of the process. We have to decide whether we should be having any public hearings. So, you know, sometimes ones that have more of a direct impact on the community, you might have a public hearing versus just doing first and second reading. So it's not as just reviewing one policy at a committee meeting. So I just want to make sure that we put some parameters around what it looks like and provide the opportunity for committees to be involved with it, but also make sure that we're not over selling the expectation of what can be accomplished.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that we're finding the right balance.
So the key is there's more to changing the bylaw than just one quick review, and some are more complicated than others that require a greater process. But at least we can start, right? So, gentlemen?
I just wanted to say, and the other thing is, if this was gonna be subcommittees, like I think it's appropriate for the Police Services Advisory Board or PAB to do ones related to them and not all of them,
Okay.
because I think what that does is say that there's no one else in the community or no one else on council who might be interested in being involved with those. So that was one of the things that we discussed, is that it doesn't make sense to just bring together a group of individuals without considering other backgrounds and those in the community who might be interested.
Mhm.
So I think we identify what bylaws have a relationship to police, and then there might be others, as you mentioned, and that those would be the areas that could be a focus, and then that also focuses the time and resources to hopefully be successful.
Okay. And the subcommittee may just be an option, the other option is the whole committee wants to do it, so then how do you accommodate the whole committee? So I know, Justin, you've thought about this a bit, because it's been
Yeah.
something that you've been working on.
Yeah, like I was just thinking a group of 5 people meet once every 2 weeks and just go over whatever. Like, the only problem I have with the police committee thing is we only meet once every 2 months. So within 6 months, like how much are we gonna get done? I don't
But
think.
there's only about 3 bylaws that relate to police.
Okay,
And there takes a lot between committees to do some of that work. So I don't think that that's unreasonable. But I will let the rest of council discuss that.
Councilor Jane.
We've got 100 years of history, possibly 100 years of bylaws out there. Do we have a total list of what are pertinent today? I guess there could be some out there that may not be pertinent in today's environment.
We've done
Have
a
we
high
gone through that?
level cursory of that, yes. We've
Okay.
Krista does have a list and has done a very high level look at them. But the thing is, we don't want to just repeal one bylaw, because you need a bylaw to repeal a bylaw.
Correct.
So we should identify all the bylaws that need to be repealed and do one bylaw. And then we have to decide, does the bylaw get repealed or is it repealed and replaced? Right? You don't repeal a bylaw if you're just gonna replace it with another bylaw, because then you just do the new bylaw and say this repeals and replaces. So those are just some of the things that we've talked through, and some of them aren't, you know, yes, we have them, but they're not doing any harm by staying on our books. So I think we want to focus on the ones that are having the most direct impact, would be the ones you want to put as priority, right? And it sounds simple as just say, well, if they're not doing any, if they're not valid, then just get rid of them. But I think you want to make sure that you have we do one bylaw to get rid of however many bylaws are no longer required. And sometimes that would be at the end of your process.
So do I understand that there may be a need for a bylaw review committee, or just send it out to all the other committees?
I don't think there needs to be a committee.
Okay.
I think that, each department has started to, as they dig into, bylaws and policies that are pertinent to their departments have said, we need to review this. So I know that finance has already identified the ones that they want to review and sort of prioritized internally what those look like and have already kind of scoped out to share with, the audit committee where those would fit. There might be other departments. I know Aaron has gone through a few and identified a few for public works. There's some that exist, some that don't exist, like brand new ones. I mean, there's a whole process that we have a good foundation to start this process. I don't think it requires a full committee, but I think that as they're required, we can determine whether there's a committee that it should go to for review or whether it's something staff just brings right to council for approval.
Sounds fine to me.
Yeah.
We have an interest now
Mhm.
to do some of that work through the police advisory committee on the, well, on one of them all, but perhaps related to the police one. So it's like, how can we take advantage of that interest to move some of these forward? And then there's a lot there, but it's like eating the elephant. You're not gonna eat it all at once, right? So we gotta pick away. We got some opportunities, take some interest there. So how do we get the most value of that? So.
I'd have to see a list of actually like what's relevant to your police committee and all that stuff, like any fines, like parking, all that stuff. Dog leashes, like that would be police, would it not?
Yeah, I would say that you could bring that to police, like the three that kind of, or two that stood out to me were dog bylaw. Animal probably falls under more planning, but you could have both review it.
The noise.
The noise one, noise and orderly, and
Cause our noise and orderly is pretty broad.
yeah, yeah, and I'm just trying, I don't know if we have a skateboarding bylaw.
Yes.
I do believe so.
Yeah, so like those ones that would have that, public safety feel to it, those would be the ones that jump out to me that need to be reviewed. Yes, they would have fines, and I mean, that's the other thing that has to be considered as part of the bylaw is discussing the fines, and also the enforcement of them, right?
Well, the officer said he could enforce any bylaws, just that none of ours have any teeth to actually do anything with.
Yes.
So he was saying that, if I remember right, please correct me if I'm wrong, he was saying they're $230 to $250 of just court fees and fees. So we'd have to be, your fine would have to be minimum $300 if we were to go and see anything for a fine.
I'll have to double check on that. I thought it was a percentage, but he could have very well said that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright.
And you do wanna make sure that like we've had this discussion with our sewer bylaw, is you wanna make sure that the fine is something that won't just be, the offense will continue
Mhm.
as well.
Well, you can have it graduated to like first offense, second, third.
Yep.
Right?
And so, yeah, that's the other process, is getting them gazetted
Mhm.
and published so that they can be enforced too. Yeah. And there is quite a process on that as
I
well.
believe that, I
Yeah.
believe that, yeah. Anytime you wanna take money from somebody, I mean, that there's a couple of checks and balances that you gotta go through first. All right, well, I'm okay with trying it. See how it works out, and if we need to tweak it, we can tweak it as we go. Does that sound like reasonable to everybody else?
So the first step will be to bring it to the police board and see how they want to proceed with that and identify those ones that you were looking at, give
So
some
I already
sense
know
out.
who they are.
Get those-
Well, that was my other thing, is your group of working group originally didn't include the entire police advisory board, so
Yeah.
things should be a equal opportunity to everyone.
Yeah.
And the board should determine whether there's a subcommittee,
Who done this?
the two counselors originally. when you came and talked to me.
Oh, okay.
So just so that we can make sure that, any committee that's working on it, and this would say, the PAB would say, okay, not everyone has the time and availability to do this, but this is what we'd like you to come back with. So there's just some parameters
Okay.
around. We'd like you to tell us what the priority is, which one should we do first?
Mhm.
We'd like to try to do all three, but here's the one we want to look at first. Here's some thoughts we had on it, and then we can take it away and prepare something.
So basically, all we're gonna be doing is giving you guys direction.
No, there'll be a role for a subcommittee if that's what you want, or through the entire committee.
As an agenda item, if you
Okay.
wanna sit there and read through the bylaw and then have the conversation and say, this is what we recommend,
Okay.
you know, it'd be repealed, it'd be changed, it'd be whatever.
Mhm.
Okay.
So yes, so I think we can talk after
Oh,
and figure out what that looks like for the agenda
Oh, yeah.
item, and, again, a subcommittee can be put in place and you can do a lot more of the work. Just wanna make sure that you have the resources to do that
Yeah,
work as
yeah.
well.
And I don't wanna be like, the subcommittee getting like everything reviewed, and getting a whole bunch of work done. And then it's going to you guys, and then, well, that's way too much work for us to do.
So
You know
that
what I
would be
mean?
good to have those discussions, but I think if we can spread them out and make it a little
Yeah,
more
sometimes,
manageable.
sometimes I get an idea and I just run with it,
No.
and sometimes you have to pull the leash back on me, so I don't know what I don't know, so.
I think we can come to a happy medium
Yeah, I think so too,
to
yeah.
move it along.
Yeah, all right. Sounds good.
We're good with that?
I'm good with that.
Okay, alrighty, let's move on then to department reports. So, we have the fire department report in front of you there, and you see they have some year-end numbers for us. And if you have any questions, well,
The only question I had was, how many level one qualified firefighters do we have on the fire department?
I can't answer that, I don't know. who
Yeah,
can.
there's
So
all the
that will be
takeaways.
one that we will, yeah,
Just pure curiosity. Cause I know. I I hate to ask the question, but forget new high-rise buildings, well, high-rise, 3 levels, 3 stories. And I'm pretty certain that our fire department has to have so many level one firefighters because of it.
mhm,
And we do require anytime a building or development agreement comes to council, the fire department would review it. So if that's a
Okay.
concern of theirs, they should be flagging that in any notes or comments back to the town before approval, that this would be an area they
Okay.
need to identify, but we can double check and make sure that they're aware that that should be flagged if it's a concern for any new development that
Yeah.
we're looking at, and we'll also pass along the question to get an answer.
Okay. Just pure curiosity, that's all.
yeah. Good question.
Just out of curiosity, the red component numbers that are in there, do they have any relevance other than they are highlighted? Do they tie to a budget that says we're splitting this off to the 2 groups that share the facility? Or are they just highlighted for our?
I think they were just highlighted for your viewing to jump out at you. Oh, do you know that?
Yeah, just to follow up, so the percentage that the municipality shares versus what the town shares for the operating budget is based on calls for the previous year. So when we approved budget, we didn't have this, and I believe we approved it at 62.7, and it's come in and it's around 61, so I think it's about $1,000 less that the municipality plans to contribute. But we always do, so the way it works for billing and funding through our agreement is we bill in advance now based on budget. And then we do a true up after our audit's been complete. So whether it's a surplus or a deficit, it's always balanced out that way based on the previous year's call. So we did use this information to recalculate that percentage.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, let's move on. Community development. Katie, anything you wanna highlight there?
Maybe just a few quick points.
Mhm.
I know we are in April, but summer staff, have been hired. We had a wonderful said pool of applicants, and then someone made a joke about us getting pool. So it's not a wonderful pool of applicants. We had, a large number of, very qualified applicants this summer and are very excited, moving forward. So we've hired 4 day camp staff, an intern, museum manager, VIC attendant, as well as 2 park staff, and have an opera for the lead. So be excited about that. We have also been transitioned into getting, parks and spaces open for the summer months, including our courts. And so that's, been hard work with the partnership of many departments, anything ready there. I also just wanted to quickly point out that in an effort to continue, to work towards a more welcoming and diverse, community, we will be highlighting upcoming dates of significance in our committee of the whole report moving forward, as you can see at the bottom. So several years ago, I guess it was 2 years ago, when we signed the anti-racism charter, we had worked with the County of Kings, who had full-time diversity staff on, to kind of come up with a calendar of annual events or celebrations. So we have pulled the dates of significance from each month, and we will be including those in the committee of the whole report, just so folks are more aware.
Katie, on that, so I see you've identified where we'll also do some other kind of recognition, so it's social media posts. So where there are blanks, that means we don't?
At this moment now, you're correct in stating that. I think that the intention is to move to a more robust section of recognition. But again, as this is the first month in pulling it, we're revisiting those dates and seeing all of the upcoming events. So the intention is to have more under the recognition event. Again, this is just the first month that we're revisiting, and the intention is to do more to recognize those events for sure.
Councilor Goddard.
Super.
Yes.
What can you tell us?
So we had money in the budget this year to do some pretty, I would say, significant upgrades. At first, we anticipated that Public Works would be doing majority of that work, but we were able to meet with Trail Flow, who designed the entire park. And they provided us with a quote that was shockingly significantly under budget. So they agreed to do 2 days worth of work. 1 day would be on fixing the wooden structures and jumps that are there. And the next day would be focused more on like pruning and cutting back limbs around the path. So they've already completed the first day. They've repaired all the wooden structures. So now I believe they were supposed to come last week, but I don't know if it was gonna snow or something on that day, but the weather wasn't in their favor. So we anticipate by the end of the month that everything will be set to go. The only thing unfortunate, we had a bit of wind a few weeks ago that knocked down some of the signage at the park. So we are working to replace that as well, but everything should be set by the end of this month. We've also discussed and worked with some local folks interested in looking at running an event out of the park. So certainly focusing more and paying more attention on that park as well.
Any other questions? Welcome, Deputy Mayor. Councilor Smith.
Over the weekend, we had one of our parks vandalized. What happened and why are we not going further with any further actions?
So there was some minor vandalism at the parks last weekend. It has been addressed and dealt with. There were minors involved in the incident. Again, minor vandalism, which has been dealt with. I know there was a post circulated in which some folks felt strongly that the issue wasn't dealt with, and maybe it was worded to suggest that. I just wanted to emphasize that it was dealt with, that the folks who were involved in the incident, it was addressed with them.
Okay. So was the police called? Did the police go talk to the parents or what happened?
Not to my knowledge, no, it was not reported,
So it wasn't reported to the police?
no.
Well, my question is why?
Um, I was not as involved in the
Yeah, and
process, I
I
don't,
wasn't really, so I believe that staff found some vandalism, looked at the cameras.
Yeah.
Noticed it was youth or minors involved. Worked with staff on at here or with the school to identify who they were and spoke to the parents about it. Would that be correct?
That sounds correct, yeah.
yeah, and I will say, in the past, when it's been minimal damage of. I mean, obviously it's intentional, but I don't think the intent was the same. We have in the past. Worked with the school and worked with families, incidents similar to this, such as the backboard. Which was broken, and have had great success by simply addressing that issue and that concern with families and moving forward with. Maybe working together to do some work or not work, but working to do some volunteer hours to, pick up garbage along the trail or do some things like that and have resulted in a positive outcome. So we have suggested and talked about things like that moving forward. I haven't been involved in the one-on-one conversations, but I think that that was the intention here. And I will say that had we not had the new technology to see these things, and again, I think that that is a great benefit, but it was minor, what I would consider minor, ongoing vandalism you would see in a park. I don't know how to explain, like it wasn't.
The value of it wasn't significant.
Mhm.
I say that, but I look at you too, to confirm that, Aaron. So where we have had significant vandalism, we definitely contact the RCMP and put in a report and work with them. This one internally, we didn't warrant that that was required, but we can always review processes and.
And I will note that, like, when we say young, I mean, we're 11, 12-year-olds, this is not 16-year-olds, and this is not folks that are intentionally going out and smashing windows or anything like that. I'm not sure.
Yes, 11 and 12-year-olds can damage stuff just as easily as 16, 17, 20-year-olds.
Absolutely, they,
So what I'm saying is, if we don't call the police on this, then it doesn't get reported. Their stats don't go up. They don't show up at the group crime. And I'm willing to bet, if the parents had the RCMP show up at their house, those kids would probably think twice before doing it again, rather than at the school. Because my wife works in the education system, and they're not very hard on these kids when they're messing up there either. So if we're sending the police every time, then the message will get through that you will have the police at your door if you break anything in this town. Which I am more than happy to be part of. Because it costs taxpayers money when anybody does this.
So you mentioned it's been successfully dealt with. Does that mean they're gonna clean it up or repair it or whatever it needs? Like what extent, like how is it, to what extent has it been dealt with? I mean, we've been.
So there were two incidents. One incident was the concrete posts in front of Carol's place. One was physically toppled by a group of youngsters who were very quickly identified. Even staff recognized several of those people. So that one we were able to fix with Public Works. With PL Premium, we basically glued it back together. We stacked everything back up and glued it together. Apparently that's been done in the past before. This wasn't the first time that one had toppled over. The second issue was one of the new key fobs on the women's bathroom, the exterior public bathroom. The youngster had ripped it off blatantly right in front of the camera. you know, very clear, very clear picture of who it was. Without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, there was, it's a high definition camera pointed at the individual's face, right? So again, people on staff recognized that individual. I've been involved more in the cleanup and the fixing, not so much the social media posts or anything like that. But in both cases, because the individuals were easily identified, it was dealt with without involving the RCMP. We did have a lot of discussion internally within, among staff on, you know, when we should and when we shouldn't involve the RCMP. And I think in this case, because the individuals were recognized, the decision was made to talk to parents in the school directly.
Just don't have an answer to the question as to how it got resolved. What was the end result? What's the punishment? What are they doing?
Yeah, I can't answer that.
So I think this just identifies, like, I wasn't here when it happened and there was conversations happening on our teams, but
Yeah.
I don't think we've debriefed as a staff to say what happened. So I think we need to go away and say when these happen in the future, whether we're pressing charges, to your point, report it to the RCMP, so there's a record of it, and then work through how we resolve these issues, because we obviously don't have those answers for you today, and we should be able to have those answers for you.
Yeah, like, I'm not saying press charges every time. It goes to the stats, right? The more crime that goes on, the more often the cops are gonna come.
Mhm.
And then we can track it. Well, geez, you know, Rainforest Park's been vandalized 20 times this year.
Yep.
You know what I mean? That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point.
Councillor James.
And I guess I'm in agreement with that, but we do need a process, we do have to, so that staff aren't left to making the decision
Yes.
without following a process. We do need a process that's out there. If something has happened, you escalate it up somehow to different levels, whether it's the RCMP or whether it's, I can't say that, or doing something that, will correct the action in the future.
Yeah.
So, but no, they shouldn't be vandalizing town hall.
I know of it.
Okay, thank you on that one. So we'll add it to the action items and we'll create a process to better determine how we deal with vandalism and vandals and
Well, and I
Those
guess
who-
at any level, because we do, like, we had incidents at our substation, you know, insignificant, and even we found, someone had cut a fence, so we contacted the RCMP, like, there are things that we report right away, but I think we need to, it's not about, I think the reporting, we're all agreeing should be happening. It's what involvement the town wants to have in suggesting or working with anyone on remedying the situation. Or whether we just wanna say RCMP deal with it, or do we wanna have a bit of a restorative
Well, we can have a restorative.
justice process, like, not that we would send it to them, but that we would more work.
perhaps.
And
I think it should make sure we're being objective in the
Yes.
process as opposed to, well, we know that person and so therefore we'll do this step, but that person on the camera we don't know, so we can take this step, like. It
absolutely,
needs to be very objective and.
Yep.
Consistent
Unbiased.
and unbiased. Okay. Anything else in development report, Councilor?
Yeah, reviewing the current flag policy. Can you tell me about that?
I don't know,
sure, I can speak to that
Oh.
only because, Taylor, that was something that, it's not a priority, but when we have the time, we had a previous counselor that no one on staff would have known they were a previous counselor. It just said it in their obituary, pass away, and a week later, it was mentioned, should we have lowered the flag for them? And I believe that our policy does say that former counselors, but we don't have a good record of who every four. But for mayors, we can just go to the wall, and see the last two that we know who they are, to say who they are. So we wanted to, that was the section of the policy that was, and then how long do you keep the flag down, especially if, like, I think there's, standards out there that say a week or until the funeral or a week. Because some celebrations of life or funerals happen.
Months later.
Right. So that was what that relates to, and I just asked community development to be the ones that are responsible for reviewing that policy, because I'm not sure if there's anything under that policy that also talks about the fourth flagpole, so it made sense to have community development review it.
Taylor did report on that, community development,
Oh,
and
good.
some of the pieces that you're looking at as to how we identify them. But it does bring me to the question, does the policy say anything about popes? And whether or not we should be,
Right, I don't, and this was also the other thing, who's monitoring everything? So when something happens, who do you contact to say, please go do something with the flag? Does it always have to come to me, or if it's in line with the policy, can someone just go do it? Those are the things that we need to work out internally.
Yeah.
Good question.
So we should check on the pope, that's
Yes.
one immediately we should resolve.
Yeah.
And whether we are supposed to or should or shouldn't. Yes, we can't be responsible for knowing everything out there, so if we have to count on the community to bring us the information, and then you can refer to the policy and say, yes, that does, or no, that doesn't conform, and we will when we have a chance. And then somebody, whoever has the key, would be responsible for lowering it. I think that's, but I hope we don't put in the policy that it'll be our job to seek out and make sure, because that's gonna be a little bit more difficult, I would think, to know,
Does the government office send anything out, like any, like?
Yeah, and
Because
I've
I-
seen nothing on the listserv about whether
Because
people
I
are
know
lowering
the
their.
provincial directive over the weekend,
Yeah.
yeah, was for the massacre there, like 5 years ago, like there was the flags were lowered
Right.
on the 18th, 19th.
Mm.
The province put that directive out. Well, I don't think the Pope would be more of a federal, probably,
No,
directive or.
I don't think federal would do the vote.
No,
No, it opens too many doors. You got 100 different religious leaders around the world.
True
And you can't get involved in that.
Yeah, that probably makes sense.
Yeah, so our policy may not refer to it, but it's best to check,
okay.
at this
But
point.
you're right, it probably doesn't because it gets too into.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, the Queen made sense because of our relationship.
Yep.
But the Pope gets into religion, which.
Prime
usually
ministers,
stays-
premiers,
Yeah.
who the province would lower. If a local member of parliament passed away locally in his riding, they would lower the flags. And so on, but, yeah, there is a full protocol for it.
And how does the Legion have a different protocol, or do you fall under a protocol? from
We-
somebody else?
The Legion does have its own, because it relates to, some Legion members at time, past presidents pass away, we lower our flag. But that's just our Legion,
Right,
and we lower them for, if a, district commander should pass away, then all the legions in that district, and so on. But, we don't do it for, anything religious whatsoever. And political leaders would only be dictated by whether it was a prime minister, probably a premier may not qualify because it's not national.
Yeah, if it's, to be fair, I haven't really reviewed it. But if it's similar to some others, like usually your federal and provincial are referring to what they do. So your policy refers to their standards, and then it's anything you want to add locally to be
yeah.
considered would be what your policy includes, I think. But we'll pass these comments along.
okay, and anything else,
Just a quick question on the new closing or the changes in staff with the KMCC and the staff, the fitness center staff that are taking on different duties, responsibilities and such. Any issues with that now, or is that all fully, everybody copacetic with it?
I
So-
would say, you go ahead and speak to.
The fitness center staff are comfortable in the closing procedure that as it is now. We have heard some concern, that the walking track is not now open the hours that the fitness center is open, due to the security reasons. So the walking track is now closed when there isn't an arena KMCC staff in the facility, which means the fitness center is sometimes open and the walking track is not. But our staff are happy and comfortable and feel secure in the current process.
That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
And is the log form in place and the other organizations all aware of it as well?
Yes, so, Taylor, was able to create a form, for the facility. And we were able to print those off and bring them to the facility manager, who then worked with, the staff to implement. Of the different groups. Is what I have been.
Do you know if he made contact with the Lions and
I believe our
So they-
staff have, I believe,
our staff talked?
have discussed that with them as they are usually the ones leaving the facility last, so.
That's a good thing. Okay.
Mhm.
Good. Anything else for? me? No? Alrighty, let's move on and Public Works, Aaron.
Okay, I'll just kind of pull some highlights from the report unless there's any questions. Asset management, we've recently signed a software agreement with a company called Brightly. They have an asset management software. It can be used for things like work orders, which will help kind of keep things on our radar as a public works team and elsewhere within our staff. It will also help with things like accountabilities and kind of matching work to skills and certifications. That software is it's a nationally used software, and they have a very unique pricing where the software is the same, whether you're Toronto or Berwick, but you pay based on your population. So we're getting the same quality of service that Toronto or Halifax would get, but we're paying about $6,000 a year based on our current population. So it should be quite unique. It's gonna take about 12 months to populate the software with our assets. It'll probably then take another 12 weeks to figure out what to do with it. I mean, let's be honest, but again, I think it's gonna help us keep track of our priorities and our accountabilities and our matching our work scopes to our certifications and our qualifications. Stormwater management, we had our public engagement session about a month ago today, just about. Next week, I'll be hearing from CBCL with an update on where they are. They've recently turned in their 20% progress claim, which would suggest they're 20% complete the work, and I'll hear from them next week on that. As far as the upgrades at the wastewater treatment plant, the aeration materials have arrived. They arrived last week. That's about $250,000 worth of plastic, basically, is what's arrived. That we should start the install of that equipment in early or mid-May, which should be completed by Gary Parker Excavating. The other piece of that work is the blower upgrades. Those blowers have a significantly longer lead time than the plastic components. They should be arriving approximately in September. As far as the tertiary filtration, we're still undergoing design work for replacement filters. That work's being done in Quebec by a company called Veolia. It's all 100% Canadian equipment, which we're quite fortunate to have with the tariffs. Sidewalk upgrades, that's really kind of on park for now, just based on our capital priorities. You know, that's something we can talk about probably next fiscal year. As far as operational highlights, it's a very Significant year for potholes, as I'm sure many of us have noticed. Things we don't think about, but mild winters require higher maintenance budgets. You have more tendency for pothole formation because you have more freeze-thaw cycles and you use more salt. So ironically, our mild winters are coming at a cost. And for the first few months, we had the salt eating up our budget, and now we have asphalt eating up our budget. So, but we're managing with that as best we can. Brush cleanup will start in a week. Next week, we'll start that. We've kind of unofficially started already. We're on our 4th bin already of brush. So we'll continue that till the end of May. Starting in May, we'll start traffic line painting and we'll continue with potholes probably throughout the summer. I'm just looking at this to get some quick updates. Other capital work that's underway, the front desk renovations for improved accessibility should be finished in about 2 or 3 weeks at the most. If anyone's peeked in the windows, it is looking pretty good. We're waiting on the countertops. Today, they were adding the accessibility motors for the front door. So by the end of this week, we'll see the buttons for the doors. Next week, we should receive the countertops, and then they really just have to finish things up. So front desk area is coming relatively soon. As far as upcoming priorities, we have a crosswalk to repair at Main and Commercial. This will be the 3rd repair in my 11-month tenure here. So we might actually look at installing that farther away from the intersection. It gets taken out by tractor trailers on their way to Eden Valley, who are in a rush. Street sweeping should start within the next 2 or 3 weeks to clean up the gravel from the winter.
Already started, I've seen them do it already.
Yeah. I'm anxiously trying to finish the paving contract so we can get that out and started. And then the Vector and CCTV RFQ will be next, which we're doing in conjunction with Fort Williams and Minus, so that we get a bulk discount. And with that, I'll turn it over to questions.
Deputy Mayor.
At the very top is our Eden Valley grates again. Well, I see they've got a fence up back there. Is that going to affect the installation of that galvanized thing on the far side on the Eden Valley side?
I don't think so, although I haven't been back there for a couple weeks. Last time I was back there with Barry, though, we could get in around the fence and come up. So we would have to kind of follow the fence downstream and then bring the equipment upstream along the water course to install it. I think we can still do that, but I might have to drive back and take a look if they've installed more fencing.
So they're going fencing.
Yeah, and that grading is underway. Ricky Balser is working on that. It is happening. He admittedly, he took the winter off to focus on plowing. And then when he finished plowing, he took time off to get his gear maintained and put away. But he is building those grades now. So they are coming.
Councilor Doran.
Yellow paint, you're painting roads.
Yes.
Are you gonna redo those hash marks along the sidewalks?
Yes.
Yeah, I've had that mentioned from people with vision difficulties who rely on them.
No, you're talking with yellow.
Yeah, there's these
Where
like
you're
2 yellow
exiting.
diagonal lines where you're coming to a dip,
Okay,
or it's a driveway or what have you.
so like where you're exiting
Or
the
across.
sidewalk to enter the roadway.
Yes, if it's just a change in elevation,
Yeah,
and they have these 2 yellow hash marks. And some of them are quite worn.
we have the paint, so there's no reason why we can't do it. As far as paint inventory, let me double check, because I don't believe we did that last summer. So let me try to find out why. If there was a reason why we didn't do it, that
Yeah,
might be something we need to consider. I might need to circle back, but I can't think of any reason why we couldn't do that.
Yeah, it was typically done on the commercial street section.
Yeah,
The whole businesses.
now, as we upgrade sidewalks, we'll need to install that yellow pad, basically the texture pad that you can feel with your feet, but, you know, in the meantime, yellow paint would be a
The marks were already there. just
Yeah.
They weren't.
Yeah. So I'm gonna take a note and, if there's a reason we can't do it, I'll circle back and let you guys know. Yeah, for sure.
Councilor Sweeney.
You say you're continuing with potholes. I hate to say this, because it seems like I'm directing this. And that's not what I want, but the main entrance coming into town has 3 potholes in it. One of them's right in the middle of a lane,
Coming from,
the highway, commercial and main one. And there's one hole there, it's about this big around, and maybe they're that deep. And it's right in the middle of the lane.
that's on commercial and main.
Yeah,
I hit it every time.
and there's 3 of them, and every time the trucks go by, every week it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Like, is there any way, like, I know, I don't wanna direct, but like, that's the first thing people see when they come in.
That if, you know, there's a lot of,
And I know there's like a temperature thing and all
Yeah.
that stuff, so like, I'm just,
we probably honestly haven't noticed that it's deteriorated to that condition.
just go look at
So if
it.
there's any potholes that people are seeing, by all means, please let us know. You know, we might be focusing on this side of town and things are getting worse on that side of town, and we just haven't seen it for a week.
Like, I'm not, like, you guys are doing great, like, I'm hearing from people that they're happy you fix potholes on their street.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is like, this is the main entrance to the town. This is the first thing visitors and everybody sees. And they're losing half their car in one of these potholes.
Yeah, I personally haven't noticed them there.
Okay.
So that's why I haven't done anything about them, but I can, we'll check it out.
Okay.
We'll check it out.
Just have to go, like, if you get to it, you get to it. I'm just bringing it up because I see it every day, 3-4 times a day. And it's substantial. It's quite a big one.
That's great. Again, that feedback's helpful.
And I just wanted to clarify, because that is very helpful. If we are filling it though daily because of the big trucks, would it be unreasonable to think that we're putting a lot of money, sinking a lot of money into it and it just keeps?
So we have. I
Just
don't-
trying to understand
yeah,
the
I
cold
don't
patch,
think
like
we-
it's not.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
cold patch is it's a Band-Aid, not a cure.
Yeah.
We have been purchasing 2 types of cold patch this year. One is extremely expensive, but it's a resin-based. So it bonds a lot differently
Okay.
compared to an asphalt cold patch. And it also has some degree of flexibility.
Okay.
So it bonds better and it moves. So you're not creating rocks, you're creating a really, really thick bubble gum with gravel in it. almost. So again, it's about 3 times the price. It's not something we can afford to fully replace cold patch with, but for high traffic intersections, it's something that might make sense.
Fine, if we're trying, and it's just the first year we had it, first year we're trying this.
This is the first year we've tried it.
So like, who knows, these patches may last
Yeah.
5, 6, 10 years longer than
Exactly.
the other one, right?
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then I think we're gonna be going forward with the more expensive one, right?
Quite possibly. And if people want to check, there's one at Cottage, or sorry, Maple and Maine. You'll see a gray model. It did compress more than conventional asphalt, but it looks beautiful and it's been there for over a year.
Yes, yeah.
Um,
I know in front of my house, it gets patched every year,
Yeah,
because like I live right on the main, and the big trucks are coming back and forth, you know, so.
now conventional cold patch has been $30 a bag. This stuff is $80 a bag. So again, there's a time and a place to use the high dollar stuff. But that's probably one we haven't filled. If we fill it correctly, even with cold patch this time of year, we should be able to get a reasonable, especially if it's deep. It's the shallow stuff that we fill in.
Okay.
Yeah, there's 3 of them on that intersection. 2 of them are like right in the lane, facing that way. If you come this way. There's 2 of them right in the, and I do better with pictures, sorry guys, I'm a picture guy.
Any potholes though, if people are seeing them for real, it's not gonna offend us to let us know.
So there's a big one right
And
there.
I do appreciate you
Small
saying
one.
that because it is important,
Yeah, when
because
there's
they
another
occur
one.
so quickly
They do.
and you
That's the
just
one-
never know
that's the
when
one
it's
right
going
there.
to.
So when I hit.
And there's 22 kilometers of road.
This is main, this is commercial,
And the
there's
fire.
the
hall.
highway, fire hall area.
Okay, that helps.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions for Aaron on his report? Okay, let's move on to finance, Lisa.
All right, well, I guess I will open it up for any questions, that people have. We passed the
Okay.
budget, yes, yes,
I
you.
made a joke, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I'm sorry, I made a joke. Sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I made a joke, I apologize. I have a weird sense of humor, my wife gets after me all the time.
Any questions for Lisa on this?
Yeah, actually.
Just one question on the Factordale turbine timelines.
Mhm.
I see the potential bidders are there,
Yes,
but on that, we've set timelines within that bid.
we did, so we've actually just granted another extension of, I believe, another 4 weeks. Our owner's engineer has 2 potential bidders coming out tomorrow. To take a look, and some of the feedback that we received from, I believe it's like the 3 or 4 that have already been to site, is that they requested more time because they are providing a detailed design. And they wanna make sure that they're scoping it and, providing a, as most accurate as possible that they can. And from our perspective, we're very supportive of extending that because we do have our, NRCan SRAP application in. And part of the requirements there is that your spend doesn't begin until you are approved. Otherwise, those dollars would be deemed ineligible, so we want to make sure that we're really balancing our timing with it. To make sure that we're going to recover as much as possible of eligible expenses through the grant. So we're happy to extend, the RFP time for people to compile more accurate quotes and bids, and, it helps us as we await, hopefully, news late summer that we're successful in proceeding with their grant.
So the dam safety report is,
So actually, that's under me.
that's under, oh, sorry.
Yeah, so we have requested another, instead of another 1-month extension, I've requested a 3-month extension. Because we are going to need to get a third party involved to do some of the mapping updates. So we can update some of the contact information and the formatting, but we do require an inundation map to be a new one to recognize whether the span of where the water would flood is going to impact any new properties or more severely. So we have to get that updated information completed. So they have approved our extension.
With our solar garden, we know the life of the solar garden. Do we know the life, with this report, do we know the life of it? To sink all this money, and it's like we sinking a bunch of money into an old car that's not worth that much, just to know in 2 years, it's not gonna be salvageable, or like a snowplow, that the frame is now rotted out, so we might have a wonderful generator, we might have a wonderful turbine, but if we don't have a bill, I just want to know that there's not another, well, now this is not gonna pass. We've got the engine and the transmission, as far as the car thing, it's working, but the body is shot. So that's all I want to know, is that they're gonna give me 20 years or whatever on the life of the dam.
So we're, like, for the business case for the whole refurbishment of the hydro facility, we're looking at a 30-year life on
Okay.
that. And the dam itself had substantial repairs done within the last 10 years. So essentially, we've got a brand new asset there that will continue to produce for some time, so long as the water keeps
Yep.
going and.
Yeah, the dam safety review had a few minor things that we're going to have to, do for maintenance and repair, but now we have that plan to be able to ensure the lifespan that is required. Yeah.
It's just a curiosity. In the dam safety review, do we have a problem with, flat-tailed rodents? Beavers?
Okay.
It's just out of curiosity, because I have seen them recap in some places.
So they have not been identified, I just searched.
Yeah, you can knock on wood.
Yeah, in the report, and there was nothing identified of noticing any damage due to beavers.
And
I don't know
our
if you have anything else.
PLT crew, they do visual inspections of all of our dams, at least twice a year, if not, I believe it's quarterly. And those are things that they would be looking for to make sure there's no dams started and, yeah, cause it is from national resource perspective a nightmare if they start to encroach.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Goddard.
Solar garden ownership. The town no longer owns the solar garden. Says, says it now belongs
Well,
to
the
Berwick
town
Electric.
technically owns the solar garden because they own all the EC
You know, Berwick
assets.
Electric,
Yes,
but we no longer sell the power to Berwick Electric.
That's correct. So within the Electric Act, although the town owns the Berwick Electric Commission, the Berwick Electric Commission is the only entity under the umbrella which is allowed to have a generating asset. So that was the major ruling from the UARB at the time, now the NSCB, the Nova Scotia Energy Board. That was kind of their determination as to where that asset will lie.
Questions? Lisa, I have one. How are we doing? Where are we with the finance court vacancy? We have temporary, but where are we with the hiring?
So we do have a temporary in place, until the end of June. We've expanded our search to include a couple other, not recruitment sites, but job boards and postings. So I'm hoping to set up within a couple weeks, a couple interviews, and, I've reached out to the community college as well. And get a couple of recommendations on some high potential graduating students from their accounting program. So we're gonna bring them in as well and hopefully get a successful candidate there.
All righty.
So you're looking outside of Middleton now.
Oh.
Okay, let's move on then. CAO and administration report, Jennifer.
so I do want to highlight, I don't really have anything else to highlight under Berwick Electric unless anyone has any questions, but under the town, I did want to just highlight that although the area board did approve the 25-26 budget, that did not include a contribution to the town for CAO and DOF support. And we had budgeted 25,000 for it. If year end is on budget for area, then the town could receive a dividend of approximately 48,000. Which would cover both the dividend and the CIO, DFO or DOF contribution that we put in the budget. And then further to that, there is some other wiggle room in the area budget, I think, for the discussion to continue with still providing a contribution back to the towns for their CAOs and finance support, but the budget wasn't approved with it. But there does appear to be wiggle room within it for those discussions to continue happening. And I do feel that if year end is on budget, then the dividend would cover the variance in our budgeting.
Maybe I'm wrong in this, but did we not agree that anything we got dividends, we put in reserves, full amount? If we got 48, we wanted to put 48 into our reserve. I didn't care which one, but our reserve.
We included 1 cent in the budget to balance the budget, and anything over 1 cent would go to reserves. So you would just have to decide at year end, when we know what the dividend is, if we haven't made up that other difference through a contribution or other savings, then you, instead of putting all of the rest of that dividend to reserves, you could use it to not have a deficit at the end of the year. So there's still time. I just wanted to give an update on where we were with that since our last discussion.
Just to add to that, the area budget included 3 separate scenarios based on the revenue because of a whole variety of different things. So because we weren't sure what scenario we were gonna land on, the budget that was approved was primarily almost an interim budget because we wanted to have a budget, the board wanted to have a budget in place for expenditures. Oh, and even within that budget, there is room to do the contributions to the municipalities if we so choose, but we didn't get into the particulars of the expenditure side of the budget because we really weren't sure what scenario we were gonna end up with in the revenue side. So, but the board wanted to approve a budget to get in place with the understanding that we're gonna come back and review this based on which scenario we land on, but also when we finish the strategic planning exercise. So it's a budget to be reviewed again, and that's why there's that wiggle room or that ability to look at some of those things, and yeah. Personally, I wasn't quite sure we were ready to even approve the budget, but the board was keen to get a budget in place, and the general manager was too, so we approved the budget as he presented it, so. Anything else, Jennifer, highlighted in your report, or any questions of
I'm sure
council?
there's questions, so maybe I'll just open it up for questions.
I have a question, but I'm not sure if I can ask it here. It has to do with the QP bargaining. Is it looking like it's going to binding arbitration? Is there any hope of reaching a settlement here, or? what's-
I can't answer that right now, more because we've submitted our last terms and we're waiting to hear from them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it okay for me to ask that?
So I guess you can ask it, because you.
I kind of did.
I think any detail we need to go in here to discuss,
Okay,
but that's what I will say.
okay. I can accept that. I can accept that.
Any other questions? Councilors?
We're having municipal planning strategy in the very near future. Any feedback that's come in on process thus far? Negative, positive, any?
Haven't received anything.
Everybody get the flyer and your mail?
I'll kind of remind people of this before, but I'll take the opportunity now. This is on tomorrow night, our review, 6 o'clock at the Anglican Church Hall next door. So a reminder, hopefully people will be there, you people and many others. And we have a process designed. Haven't heard from Crystal Wakeman, but our PAC meeting, she was comfortable with how it was going to roll out, and it'll be very interactive, more like the stormwater management night than perhaps the gym night that we had here last summer. So looking forward to that. Councilor Clark.
So there was a question if there was any public feedback, and the only feedback, and I got it late this afternoon, was the person was hoping that there would be enough background information to help people understand exactly why we're doing this. So, some background on sort of
They were hoping in this or?
At the meeting.
At the meeting,
at the,
okay.
at the meeting,
I
yeah.
think there will be.
I think
Yeah.
that's part of Crystal's plan is to, how we got to this point. And
Sort of more, but I think more of the background as to exactly why. Just really, again, understanding why we need to do the municipal planning
Oh, okay.
strategy, that kind of the needs, and I can't. As I wasn't very much part of the process last time, the feeling was that there wasn't enough background at the last meeting to help people actually focus what they were thinking, and the people only focused on one issue we're going to deal with, but still just going back and understanding that, sort of understanding
The need for a planning strategy
the
or?
need for the things that we're, like, why, not the need for a planning strategy, because I think everyone understands that, but sort of what are the priorities, the vision of the town, what do we want to see in the future, and how does this, what we're talking about tomorrow night, fit into that? And I
what are
couldn't
we even
answer.
doing a review in the first place, like why we're taking the 2012 and bringing it to today, is that?
Or why we're suggesting changes.
Well, and I mean,
That's-
my understanding is that we are talking, we're doing a municipal planning strategy to help us with, sort of our planning based on like the financial background, the needs that we have, the infrastructure, all that sort of stuff, and the impact all of those decisions have on what's mostly the major issue for almost everyone who lives in town is what it costs to live here, or what are we like, and is this really about the only way we're gonna get like one of the things that this person said is it really because the only way that the federal government's gonna give us money is if we make these decisions? And
Right.
those kinds of like,
Right,
you know,
no.
yeah,
But I can understand, I mean, the federal government for larger municipalities is putting some parameters around what they require you to have in your planning
Mhm.
strategy. And, that's one of the reasons why we likely were not approved for the Housing Accelerator Fund is because ours isn't progressive enough in terms of the number of as of right properties on one plot of land.
Mhm.
But I think that for us, it was more about how to streamline processes and make it more available to anyone who is looking to develop or to make changes or have multi-generational housing that's, with all of the newcomers we have coming, even current residents who just with financial situations the way they are, being able to renovate properties to adjust to those changing economic dynamics. So I think there was a lot of reasons put into the different pieces of the plan and the direction that we're going. So yes, that was one of the things that was considered, but it wasn't the only thing considered. And we're making through this restricted residential we're considering, this is a way to say, we've heard you. We're trying to still hold most of the town to being at sort of where others are going, but still recognizing that there's not a willingness to completely move in that direction at this time. We're trying to find that balance.
So I think that's exactly the kind of thing that.
So Crystal, you highlighted those three major areas, which is the trends in which people are looking for in housing now. Not everybody is looking to build that single family home or, in the subdivision with the picket fence. Like there's lots of different types of housing people look for. The need to have housing, based on the footprint we have, where do we put more residents and more housing? And then the third one is, it is a way to enlarge your tax base, but we need to operate the town. I mean, those are some of the higher level pieces. And the fourth is the efficiencies in it. So That's in her.
Good, great, that's
It'll
exactly.
probably be in my opening remarks as well, that we highlight some of that. So, yeah, if that's what they're looking for, if they're looking for why we municipalities have to have MPSs.
No, it's exactly
Yeah.
those kinds of things that I'm sure.
Good, so I think
I'll leave that with you.
Well, yeah, well.
That was my understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really, this person's really concerned that we need to have this go forward correctly, but feeling that if we don't explain all of those things and really talk about that, we won't have the community on side.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else, Jennifer's report? Okay, we're ready to move on to committee reports, so they're there, and we'll ask people to highlight key things, but it is there, hope people have read them. Just the first one is mine with the area, and we are back to work tomorrow with area and the strategic planning piece. We have an agenda 10 a.m. till 2:30 or so with the facilitators. We'll be meeting in East Hants to move on with that next part. Hopefully we'll see completion of strategic planning. That's the big day tomorrow, and then they'll need some time to pull it all together. We've already had a bit of a conversation about the budget. We've had some conversation about where we are with our other projects, which is one on the South Shore, a staff person working on that, and Antigonish. We have another person working on the Spring Hill, which is 2 solar garden, $20,000 panels. Those are finishing up. And the other thing I want to mention, I don't know if people have seen this, but it's called the Nova Scotia Journal Sustainable Community Development, and the area is featured in the back. We have a few of these. Power generation shift is the name of the article. And you certainly can. Roger has some at the front desk if you want to pick it up or pass it on. Yeah, unless there's any questions. Okay, let's move on to the Accessibility Committee. Councilor Plackett.
Yes, so we met on the 27th of March, and sort of the key points that I want to highlight. First of all, the accessibility and equity plan that was approved by town council on March 14th was submitted, meeting the April 1st deadline. And apparently, not every community has met that deadline as of the last discussion I had with our staff at the date of our meeting anyway. So we were feeling good about that. We had, there were a few things as well. So we had discussion about a potential multicultural diversity focused event at community development, I believe. I'm trying to remember where all of this fits together, but we had a letter from Immigration, Refugees, Citizenship Canada regarding Welcoming Week, which will be the September 12th to 21st. And we felt that this was an opportunity to align a town planned event with the potential of a diversity event that had been discussed earlier. So that we're hoping that might happen. And other than that, the other important thing coming up is that the delayed completion of the Cycle Nova Scotia Hubs project will resume their engagement sessions and their plan for May and hopefully the end of May. And this is a this project is focused on active transportation accessibility and business needs, and we're hoping that we'll get some really good community engagement. And I think those are sort of the big things that came out of the meeting. Any questions?
Or just a comment, thank you for the wonderful work you guys have done to get that in on time.
You're welcome. Yeah. Actually, we can thank the staff that did the amazing work, and yes, the committee did meet an extra meeting, et cetera, to make sure that the work got done, but it was important to do.
The report card's an interesting exercise too, as we start to develop that, I think, which will
Yeah, that's
see some good stuff out of that, and me moving on with getting the work plan piece done. Glenn, do you want to move right into the next one, the Diversity Kings?
So the Diversity Kings County Committee, they meet monthly. The meeting was on April 7th. The key agenda item was really work plan discussion and then creation of action around the work plan. And the Diversity Kings Committee, the staff members who work for the County of Kings Council have done a lot of work on developing an action plan. And so the committee spent time at the meeting sort of looking at the action plan, and we were divided into groups, and we were identifying priorities for the work plan and potential actions to achieve those priorities. It's a really great working group, and it's a very diverse membership. And there's lots of good ideas coming forward. I can't really speak to what people really suggested, but it really is amazing to watch how this group of people are coalescing and really working on the diversity work. And it will really help our community to, as we work on our diversity work, to really focus what we need to do. And the other thing that I think is valuable to know that two community members, Heather Morse, who's our alternate on the diversity committee, and Jennifer, I keep forgotten Jennifer's last name again, Days. I still continue to go to all of the meetings, and even though they're not officially members of the committee, they
Laureate.
the laureate, that's it. They've been invited to sit at the working groups, et cetera, and have been very engaged at the work as well. So you have good representation at that committee, and I think we're able to. It really does support the work that we're going to have to do here in the town. Any questions?
Comment, happy Earth Day, everyone. Yes, we're supposed to, it's supposed to be shut off at 8 o'clock or something, I think, that's when they used to see it.
Yes.
Yes, we are.
Turn the lights on.
Yeah, we'll just do it in the dark here, okay. All right, anything else? Any questions? No? Okay, we'll move on to IMSA, so that would mean the IMSA is the Kings Transit and Valley Waste. We have reports from the general manager. We have, one of the keys is, I think on Kings Transit is the putting off of the, moving forward on the electric buses after the meeting they had in Halifax Transit and some of the issues that they had. It was really amazing to hear that they ordered 60 buses, 59 of them have arrived, and they've got only 3 of them on the road working regularly. due to a variety of other issues, anything from, the logo or the, name on the side of the bus being in French or being upside down, to driver issues, to battery issues, to starting issues, like it just seemed to go on and on, so kind of put things on pause a bit and looking into doing a little more research on the purchase of, the electric fleet. More discussion on perhaps moving to a combination fleet as opposed to all electric, and I think that's some of the things they found as well. Valley waste, I mentioned before, there was an issue around with circular materials and picking up, with us picking up other items that aren't included in the new extended producer packaging. And we had an agreement that we would pick them up, and now they were saying, no, you can't combine the two types of materials, you gotta keep it separate, and so that meant other trucks going kind of behind to pick up the other items, and it just wasn't a very effective, efficient service, so they've been working on trying to get them to understand that and change that. So they seem to be optimistic they'll be moving forward on that. We no longer are shipping some of our wood, especially the non-clean wood, to Liverpool, and may have to go further to Port Hawkesbury, which is a bit of a challenge, and work is continuing there, so on some of their projects. Any questions on that one? Okay, planning advisory, Deputy Mayor Woods.
As they mentioned, guys, we had a meeting, Crystal came, she talked about the municipal plan strategy and that, we know we're all having the meeting tomorrow night. We split up into two groups, and it was great, we had two large maps here, we were able to work. So. From there, we were able to pick out the areas we wanted to, we got back together. Now, the mayor and I had to switch spots, which was productive and unproductive, because then they asked, well, what do you think? And I'd already put my spots on the other maps, so then you have other spots. But no, it was really good. We were able to get through the exercise with the understanding we might not be able to get through the exercise when we started. So we were very happy with how everything turned out, and we're happy that the meeting is taking place tomorrow. And I encourage everyone to come out to the meeting, because you'll learn more from Crystal. So. Other than I have many spelling errors, but I had trouble pulling this up and I had to have it in. So it should have been proofread. So I'll go through my template. I used to be able to erase everything. I could not last time, so I had one come up, but I did not quite realize how many spelling errors there was, as I did submit it on time, but next time it will not be like that.
I was just gonna say, I think, Krista and I were talking about this. I think there's some different ways that the template has been challenging for, some members, depending on how they access it. So we've talked a little bit about that, and maybe trying to get Jeff to come back to do an actual training session to try to improve that functionality would be a good idea. And also, I'll take a look at some of them, like it was clear if you're on a PC computer, like on a laptop, that I could see what you were trying to do and could have just clicked to correct it, kind of thing. I didn't get into the reports as much as I was reviewing the staff reports, but we can give another cursory look to those in the future. It's just the way that the programming is what needed to be. It's easier to do on a laptop, so we can try to make some of those adjustments in the future.
Any questions on that? Big event tomorrow night.
Yeah. A good turnout.
Okay, and, Councilor Goddard, my apologies, I went down through, but I jumped over Kings Point to Point, and you were gonna give us a report on that?
Yes, our last board meeting was last Wednesday, April 16th, so I couldn't get a report into just on time. Kings Point to Point Transit is a registered charity and nonprofit organization operating under Nova Scotia Societies Act. Since 1998, this organization has provided Kings County residents with affordable and accessible transportation, leading to a healthier, more socially connected community. Our total kilometers driven has declined the last 2 years due to many less dialysis trips into the city, since Kentville Hospital has dialysis, and a shortage of drivers. Our maintenance costs are plaguing our older vehicles as usual. We have lots of funding for new vehicles, but availability is a major issue right now. We got the money sitting there and we can't buy vehicles. Kings Point provides transportation for all residents, but priority is being given to those with challenges accessing public or personal transportation. There are numerous challenges ahead, including high and low volume times, driver recruitment and retention, implementation of a computerized scheduling system, and aging vehicles. Overcoming these challenges will allow the opportunity for expansion where we are needed. The board's priorities for the next 3 years, 25 through 28, are first, public relations and community engagement, and driver recruitment, training and retention, stabilization of services, and then selected growth. Our bylaws and policies are going to be reviewed for the AGM, which is coming up, and election of our executive is at the same meeting, which is on July 16th, and that's right after our regular board meeting. I can send that to you, anybody if they want it. I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
Just one question, with now what we've learned about the Halifax buses, if you could get one, are you guys as confident? Like I said, I couldn't see that coming until I read it, that 60 buses, 3 of them working, so I'm just.
We've looked and looked, and it's right now it's just about impossible for us to get an electric vehicle to do what we want.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to, I believe we are at BCFN. And that's gonna be Jennifer tonight.
Yes. So there's the 2 meetings, there was the BCFN and then the BCFN Authority, which does not include the 2 educational partners. So in terms of operations, they've moved, the Explorer, the main, I think, server or hubs or switches, that were in Kentville at the old, county building to Colebrook, and anything that was formerly at the old Hansport Town Hall to Windsor or West Hants. So that's been completed. They're looking at a network operations center contract consultant that would do this work for them outside of regular business hours. So mainly about their outages. So if there was an issue that was identified by either a partner or one of their organizations that supplies internet to business or has subscriptions, if there was an outage reported, right now that goes to a staff member with Valley or with Kings, municipality of the County of Kings. So basically they're on call 24/7. So this would allow to have service outside of those normal working hours and to track whether there's whether issues could be wait until the next day or whether they're emergency. I think one of the important discussions that we should have around this table to provide input to is on their work plan. So I believe that everyone at the table agreed that resolving the pole attachment liability of Nova Scotia Power, completing the lateral policy, developing an annual budget, and completing a long-term financial viability assessment for the organization were important. But they did have some other discussion points, which most members said they'd like to take back to their councils for discussion before commenting. So one of the questions was, do you have continued interest in Valley Run? Or sorry, VCFM participation? How can the VCFN help you, your community, and what worries you about VCFN and other? Councillor Serena has reached out to have requests that someone representing VCFN come and present to council. So I think if we can arrange to have them come talk to us about their value proposition so that council can have the discussion to answer these questions, it will be important. So we'll arrange to have that happen. Even myself, I find it hard to give a full comprehensive report on VCFN. You learn something new every time. So we have that discussion, and for both the Network Operations Center and the work plan, those were given, I guess, a green light to move forward to look at, bring back pricing on the Network Operations Center for consideration, and then we agreed to move forward on those work plan items, but still looking for feedback. And then for the authority, the first bit is just background on the common internet service infrastructure, and that it is getting to be 15 years old. So there was discussion to look at an upgrade. So phase one of that upgrade would be the design, so redesign the network to use standard ISP style architecture. And they did receive a bid on that from Sigma Gem Consulting. I'm not sure if that's how you say that. For phase one, which would be $7,200. And there is a surplus that this would come out of, so it's no additional cost to the party to complete phase one. And the authority did approve to move forward with phase one, which would come back for any recommendations to consider for the build and move forward with. I can try to answer any questions or get you the answer.
Okay, questions?
Do we have the technical expertise to address these questions that they're putting forward? I'm not a computer whiz.
Yeah.
I certainly don't understand all of the jargon. And additional education would be helpful, I'm sure, if it can be put in layman's terms. So I just ask that question is, do we have the technical knowledge of, even if they do a presentation, to be further help to them? Because
Good question. So we can check with our IT consultant who has done work in the past for VCFN and been involved to see if they can try to put it. Jeff is good at putting things into layman's terms for us to consider. In terms of, I find I rely a lot on the other members from Acadia and NSCC and their IT staff to be providing the technical questions and discussion at the board level when those questions are being considered. So it would be good to have someone additionally to listen to the presentation and maybe provide us with some suggestions on things that we should be asking. Because I don't feel that I have that technical expertise to know. But in terms of the value they bring, if they can present that value in layman's terms, then I think we could feel comfortable that we should stay involved in it. And they should be able to do that from a value proposition. I think as it comes down to the more technical conversations and approvals, that's where it might be good to have someone else to run things by.
because some of it's,
Absolutely. But I would hope that someone would be able to come here and in plain terms, tell us what the value is to the town of Berwick, and what future opportunities there would be for being a partner organization, continue to participate.
I know there's a lot of constituents here that have been asking for Berwick interest.
Mhm.
They know we're part of this thing, so is there any chance, my only question would be, is there any chance of expanding it to our population?
So,
So they pay us instead of Purple Cow or Rogers or.
oh. Maybe, I don't think we wanna get into that, but, those are things that might be in the future to consider, but,
Yeah, that's what
I think
we're not
that,
talking next week.
no, but those are complex, operations. I know that we do, like mainland used to, and I'm not sure who does it now, would hook up for businesses. Sometimes you could have a separate internet account through, was it mainland?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
So it wouldn't be through Purple Cow or
Hmm.
Eastlink, it would be using our fiber.
Hmm.
And it's through mainland, but I'm not sure if they limited to business or if it was home. I can't remember what it was, but those are great questions to ask to the
Yeah, it's-
individual who comes.
all right. Do we have any ideas on when you may be coming? Do we get back to you?
I don't, we needed to look at availability.
I have a son-in-law that's a computer engineer. And he just keeps telling me that, yeah, the town has good Wi-Fi access and good access. So there's a good connection here somewhere.
Mhm.
If it's VCFM that's doing it, it's great.
I will say that it is not throughout the whole town though, just to be clear. Our VCFN would come and end at town hall, like the fiber isn't running throughout the whole town on every pole. So when customers would say, could I connect? It could be tens of thousands of dollars to hundreds of thousands of dollars just to extend the fiber to where they could access
Yeah,
it.
but it is a different revenue stream. Right?
If
How
you
much
could
do we-
make, if you could make back what you
Wow.
invested and increase.
How much do we make back off the solar garden in the wind farm?
Right
Lots,
now,
on
yeah,
the wind farm, lots,
Lots.
potential for more.
And we made our investment back?
Well, we're making our payments on our loan payments. We made some huge dividends early on and we're gonna continue to get dividends, you know. But they're different topics, different subjects. There was a study done just on that, the business case for VCFN expanding the service.
Alright.
And I think we should, when whoever comes, we should be asking them for, kind of the background to how this authority what it was originally intended to do, what it's doing now, what some of those potential, what things have happened over the last number of years, and where that study is, and whether that study talked about governance and some of the other things that are here. From my understanding, the original mandate for this, for VCFN was to provide fiber to those communities that wanted to partner on that. And along the way, they could sell that and it would potentially be a revenue stream for them. And that was many years ago and there were.
it started because there was no fiber in the valley.
Right. Yeah.
And they wanted to build fiber because Eastlink and
Roger.
Bell would not come to the valley. And then once they built the fiber, then Eastlink and Bell built right across. But it was never, I shouldn't say never, but that was part of the original intention. I don't know how far within the municipalities to become our own service
Yeah, no,
providers.
that's not hard, no. But for VCFN to sell it to other
Service
service providers to use. And which would create a revenue stream that could then be, if successful enough, split amongst the partners. That's why there's two groups. There's the partner group. So are they still doing, is that still the mandate? I don't know. Is it, and then what was happened with this particular study that dealt with some of these questions that they're asking and some of the questions you're asking, and where is that now? I think certainly would be helpful in the review or in the presentation to have some background history with this as well, so we have a better understanding of why we're supposed to be here, maybe how it's shifted.
Perfect.
And I did have a question specifically, so one of the items that they're recommending to move forward on is an annual budget. That's not a standard
No, it
bit of
hasn't,
work. There's no
Hasn't been.
annual budget.
it hasn't been there since it started, pretty much.
Because they haven't prepared budgets every year because they've done that, like it's the same operation every single year. And it hasn't been something that they've typically done, but recognize they should be doing.
Yeah. Okay.
But they do have an audited statement of that.
They do.
It looks the same every year.
Yes,
Yes.
does.
Well, if you're not going forward, what direction are you going?
You're exactly, it just seems like they're stagnant right now.
Okay, so we will see them and we can follow up on that and we'll continue to attend meetings and be part of that. Okay. So Valley Regional Enterprise, next work, the Valley Rent. Councilor James is gonna report on that one.
Yeah, Valley Rend, Mayor Trinacity, CAO Boyd and I attended, and I got the pleasure of writing up a report.
Looks strong, dude.
Anyhow, good meeting. Looked at no additional provincial funding. Looks like it's gonna come unless Annapolis County decides that they're gonna come on board, but we've not heard back from Annapolis County if they're coming on board with it. It'd be nice, I think, if they did. However, that's their decision. I expect that they're looking at what can they get out of it, best bang for their buck. So they're in, I would expect, still negotiations with the province. We did talk about an upcoming annual general meeting late June. And did review some of the operations, business retention expansion, which is sort of a North American and economic development strategy that a lot of communities use. Been going on for many years. Also looked at the Valley Rend and what they're doing with the agri-food sector, tourism, and business connections in the valley. And one of the main purpose was to appoint 3 new board members, and I've listed them there. One from Wolfville, one from Port Williams, and one from Steam Mills. All seem like very qualified individuals to sit on the main board of the Valley Rend. And next meeting's a couple in July. Any questions? Any comments from the other 2 participants?
No, I covered her.
Do we have a date that they might be coming out to see us, around and do a little
We
presentation?
sure do. That's next month in May.
May 13th.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thanks so much.
No further questions. Let's move on to the mayor's report then. And I can update you on a couple things that happened today. We did have the King's Remo and Dan Snowball's his usual efficient self. We covered a lot of ground in an hour and a half or so. Just some of the highlights, and we'll have a report on this for the next meeting, but there's a lot of movement now with the Department of Emergency Measures, putting staff in place and work on the Nova Scotia Guard. And Dan's been in contact with all those and quite aware of what's going on and forward to working with them. Jennifer and I met with Jason Malloy this afternoon Jason Malloy is with the, what's the name of the company now? It's not Saltwater anymore, but it's the Register, it's the local newspapers.
Post media.
Post Media, yeah, Post Media. And quite an interview had lots of questions on our budget and how we got to where we are, what our focus is and a lot of issues. And we left them with the insider budget update and we may call with more questions. But I think we covered it fairly well. These questions were good, but. And
40-minute conversation, I would think
Yeah.
hopefully he can get
Yeah,
it.
something I think.
Good story.
yeah, exactly. And we had the meeting today with Department of Transportation and Dexter's, a rep from them, Ken Kroll from Department of Transportation, a guy named Chris Ryan with Dexter's, who's an on-site supervisor down there. Went through our wish list and they were in agreement with pretty much everything on it. They weren't so happy about additional paving, but we did saw it off as a gravel parking lot and they're gonna expand that. They weren't sure they had enough fill there to fill the pond, but they'll fill it as far as it can go. We had a good walkabout to look at how we'll do our sidewalk and our river viewing area and where our light poles will go and some of those things. And Aaron has done some work on getting us some apples to go on the pillars that stand at the entryways or to the bridge. And so I think all in all, we had a good conversation with them and they understood what we were looking for and the firemen were there. And but still a lot more detail to figure out as it starts to come together there and as they start to. I think the key will be getting the traffic flow on the bridge and then they'll see how the rest of it shapes up. You can look at designs and how things taper away from the new bridge and some of that kind of stuff. And so Jennifer, Aaron, Katie, anything to add to that?
End of June, I mean, it should all be complete by the end of June, so it's coming.
Quickly. Yes. Yeah. Okay, and I mentioned the strategic planning session for tomorrow's area. All right, so we have no in-camera meeting tonight, so we can call for adjournment and we'll take a quick break and move into the special council meeting.
Can I ask one question? Code of conduct. Do a lot of us have that done?
So we can ask who has it done and then consider if that's a lot or not.
I don't know.
I'm just saying I did complete it and the ones that went into that Wolfle meeting, the 20 questions, the only thing they didn't cover. Literally, the 20 questions you answer afterwards, I got 20 out of 20 right. I was very happy. I'm just saying they covered it all that day, what we went in and that's the 20 questions that day would have been really nice. They'd had at least 20 or whatever. How many of us attended would have had us all done.
I think some of us are at various stages. I received my access to Nova Scotia Community College, got that this morning, but I haven't gone the next step to get to the code to do the review. Counselor Jameson, did you get it?
Completed.
You're done?
Yeah, it's done.
Yeah.
Whoa.
The report's in.
All right.
And I'm done.
And that's quite good. Chris is somewhere in that.
In the gray zone, you don't wanna talk to me.
It does take 2 days.
But you were the first to send it.
Yes, he was the first one to take a crack at it. He's in limbo with getting his access to Nova Scotia Community College. Justin is, yeah, so a couple of us to go, so.
It's not intuitive at all, I'm saying.
No, not process, no.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
It's all moved. Meeting is adjourned. We'll take 5 and get on to our next agenda.
No,
All right, let's call the meeting to order. We have a special council meeting. And do we have anything to add to the agenda? Okay, can we have a motion to approve the agenda? Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councilor Goddard, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's move on to the first item, new business, which is the pre-approval of the venture for the water storage. So who wants to speak to that one of these, all, these two yours, please?
They are. So the first one is a water storage tank. And just before I review, there is an amendment. So I received our ministerial approval today. And we had placed our temporary boring resolution for 220,000. Because the original budget, for our contribution was less than that. It was supposed to be around 175,000. Since the time when we placed the temporary boring resolution, we've received all of the final invoices or notice of invoice, and we're actually only able to borrow for 220,000. So the 12,650.41. We're not able to borrow under this temporary boring resolution. So one option would be to wait and place the debenture in the fall, because we'd have to go back through this process again. However, we would be incurring interest on those funds allocated. So staff would recommend that we take that additional 12,650.41 from operating reserves to cover that overage, and continue with placing the pre-approval of the debenture for $220,000 in total. So within the request for decision, I had provided a chart of the estimate of the borrowing scenarios. So with the amendment to be 220, that would be your annual or your principal repayment total. Your interest would change from those approximate values to 55,000 for 10 years, approximately 81,000 for 15 years, approximately 108,000 for 20 years, and approximately 135,000 for a 25-year. And the annual operating, again, it starts at higher, and you would see that slightly reduce year over year because your interest payments are going to reduce while your principal remains stable. Would be 31,000. 15 years would be approximately 24. 20 years would be approximately 21, and 25 years would be approximately 18. Again, those amounts would slightly decrease year over year through the duration of the term.
Question, and you're recommending 10?
Yes, so staff is recommending 10. So based on feedback from the engineer, you will see maintenance costs start to creep up. And then when you look at the total interest paid over the term, keeping it closer to the 55,000 at least keeps the amount lower in interest versus something like a 25-year term where you're then paying 135,000. And when you look at the difference, the impact year over year from annual operating with the different options, we feel the most financially responsible would be going with the 10-year term. And then that would also free up the ability from the town's perspective, and then also the contributions from municipality of Kings. When your maintenance costs start to increase as well, then there would be capacity there.
Any questions, comments, Councilor Davis?
Yeah, just a couple things. The interest rates differential between a 10-year term and a 20-year term, do you have those?
They do, so it's an estimate because they won't provide them until you actually place. So the ceiling that we used was 6.5%. And the base that we used was 4.74.
4.74 on the 20-year.
Yes.
You won't get cheaper interest rates, I can tell you that.
Yeah, they're very reasonable, and that was what they could offer as an estimate, but again, until you're.
But on the long haul, you will not get cheaper interest rates. And if you've got a 40-year lifespan for that asset, we have cash flows issues as I see them coming up next year and the year after. I would suggest you might look at a 20-year or 25-year term. 20-year, and you can do a balloon payment at that point if necessary. I know it's costing you more interest,
Yes,
but that's just over time. If that
exactly.
asset is going to be used for that period of time,
It is.
and if we don't have any more cash flow items to be considered in the future, then I would go with the 10-year. But I see that we've got some major costs coming up that are going to have to be financed. If I'm wrong, then 10 years.
Yeah, so we do have, the fire hall will be coming offline. So currently that's there, so that was considered when I ran my scenarios as well. Because that currently has a debenture payment associated with that. And when you look at the annual operating, the difference between the two, I mean, you're looking at, you know, a little more than 1 cent on the tax rate, and then, you know, $10,000 different operating for that year. And when you compare it over the life, you've got, you know, $55,000 worth of interest versus 108. It's trying to make sure that we're starting to realize more value for actually paying for assets, hoping to have an ability to start putting funds away when we have a huge purchase like the fire truck, for example, that will have reserve, starting to put that away and have the cash to reduce the amount that we're trying to borrow. And when you borrow for a 20-year, I find what we're running into here is we're trying to borrow for maximum terms, which keeps our annual repayment low, but then we're running into public forgetting that these assets are on our books and we're still paying for them. We're having to replace things sooner than debentures are being repaid. And then it's like, well, now we've got all this on our books. We've got all these assets that need to be replaced and we haven't put anything away. So it's trying to get in the balance of balancing the term of our debentures, trying to reduce the amount of interest that we're paying over time, and freeing up some capacity to save for future spends. The council can direct whichever council would like to do.
My only comment is that you're talking 4.7% here on a long haul loan versus 6.5 on a short haul loan.
No, sorry, so the 6.5 is the cap. So if it was to, so the way the debenture fluctuates, it's not held steady every year with your interest. So if it's a 20-year, it's not like you're locked in at 4.75 for the 20 years. So the interest starts low and then it peaks and then it comes back down when you're placing that term in the duration. It's not a constant interest rate for the term.
They're not giving you a 20-year term loan.
No,
They have that capacity.
that's typically not what they've provided. Like they do, to do an all-in-one, you'd be paying a higher interest rate. And when you look at the blend over it, that's how historically we've been placing it.
Because I used to borrow it from the Department of Finance for 40 years. And the longer the term you went out, the lower your rate.
Yeah, that's
And-
not,
And it's weird they're doing it that way. If you set a 5-year renewal on it, then it would go up and down.
no, they run it out for the 20-year period that they have. Yeah,
They're not they're doing you a favor and being your financier, but there are better terms. Anyhow,
okay.
now that I understand which rate you're talking about, I can see why you're going to take.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Any other questions then? The report? Okay, let's have a motion.
You need the first motion to be if you're.
I will need two separate motions now for this. I will need a motion to approve the $12,650.41 to fund the water storage tank from operating reserves. Excuse me, and then the second would have to be the changed figure.
Let's take the first
I'll do
one.
the first one.
Okay, thank you. And are you,
What was the actual figure, 12,000?
12,000.
$12,650.41.
Where are you seeing that?
Anniversary.
I'm just,
Oh, cause you're looking up there.
I am, no, I'm netting the,
Oh, okay.
That
so
was
not
my
that-
eyes
yeah, I
too,
did not
that was
see
my
it.
eyes too, I looked at this, I don't see it.
She's subtracting.
She's doing the math.
Okay.
Doing the
I'm
math.
like, man, I don't see that.
it's because I never do math in my head and showing off.
Okay, all right.
so let's do it one more time. 12,000.
641 cents, I can do it now that I know what it's gonna be taken care of.
Okay, so we have the mover and seconder was Councilor Sereno. All those in favor say aye. Okay, the motion's carried. Now let's move on to part B. And which is to, Lisa, how do you want that to read?
That everything that's there, but the amount should be 220,000.
Yes.
And
So instead of
whichever
the 232,
term is the
it's
recommendation.
2, okay.
Right. 10-year term. 10-year term. If that's
if that's.
what
the
someone will
recommendation.
move, I will move that. Okay, Councilor Sereno, do we have a seconder for that? Councilor Dodd. All right, so we've got the number and we've got the 10 years, which I think was the key piece. Okay. Any discussion on that?
Just, do we have any vouchers, like, big things landing at the same time? I guess we know this is paid off in 10 years, but do we have?
Well, we have with the next RFD, we're gonna have another fire department asset that
Okay.
needs to be
And it's 10
secured.
years too, is what her recommendation. is.
And that's
Yeah.
what I wanted to know without jumping ahead to say, is that gonna be 10 years as well?
Yeah, that's the recommendation.
But if you do it longer, then it's on the books longer and your debt's.
I didn't, I just want to know, that's
Yeah.
great, thank you.
Will our funding partner in this be doing it for the same amount of term, or are they doing it out of cash?
I believe they pay cash.
That's why.
Okay, any further
That's the
discussion?
1.5%.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Right.
Any contrary, our motion's carried. Thank you. So now we can move on to the debenture for the mini pumper fire.
Okay. So. Here, the proposed lifetime is 15-year, again, reducing to a 10-year debenture. I looked at 5, but that was too tight from a cash flow perspective, so recommending the 10-year. Again, trying to minimize the interest and balance the repairs and maintenance that will be required, throughout the later duration of the useful life. So any questions or comments?
Do we have? Sorry, you go first.
Councilor Jamison?
The pumper truck, where was that acquired from? Do we know?
So the chassis was purchased from Connell Chrysler, and then the build of the actual portable pumper was completed by Lance.
As much Canadian as possible.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Just a note, Lance does amazing work. They built a couple of trucks for the fire department, even when I was on it. Yeah, they're cat's ass.
Oh, wonderful.
Like I challenge them, any company in the world to go
Yeah.
against Lance for building trucks.
that was
They're good
great.
trucks.
Yeah, they're really good trucks.
Any further questions on this one?
Do we have the maintenance cost of the last one, like when it started going up and what it was? Probably not. I'm just trying to get a view of it,
Yeah,
because I've seen some of the trucks down that just sold had 10,000 kilometers on it. Again, that gets washed underneath and taken care of better than my vehicle does,
Mhm.
and it looked immaculate when it went out the door, so I'm just. And I know things go wrong when they do, they're costly, but I was just wondering that in that regards, if they're luckier than we are maybe with plow trucks.
I wouldn't say luckier necessarily. I think they follow a more stringent maintenance plan on their vehicles. And I think here, our plow trucks were stretched quite a bit beyond the useful life, and that's where a decision likely should have been made about 5 years ago, and that's why you're starting to see really substantial work being done to them. But the fire department is really good with their rolling stock, really excellent with their maintenance. And nothing within the last like 5 years was substantial, at least that happened to the old one.
That's good for me, that's my argument for the other 5 years, that's the argument I wanted for the 15 over the 10 to say. They have a pretty good track
I think
record,
they
I'd
do.
let it go a little further on this one, and then, yeah, but that's. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So do I understand on the fire truck replacement program that we will probably have another unit come up for replacement within the next 5 years? And if so, it will be quite expensive
It's a
within
very
the $1 million budget.
Substantial. Yeah, if you recall, we do have it in, I thought it was year 3 of our capital plan, and our portion that they were requesting was 633,000. And if you remember the debt scenarios that we ran, like, that is extremely pressing on our debt service level, and I think it's gonna require a deeper conversation from council on the timing perspective. Especially when we have our wastewater treatment plant and potentially Foster Street coming up. I think it's gonna be a tough discussion, I guess, to have around the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was one of the reasons I was saying your cash flow is gonna be a problem here.
It, even if you were to expand these loans, like, once we get into. We just can't afford the 633,000. So.
I know.
Okay. I hate to be frank or, you know,
Please
but
be frank, it's
I
frank.
mean, it's,
Yeah, it's just reality of the situation.
yeah.
Okay, any other questions? So let's have a motion then.
A motion for 10 years.
You're looking for a motion for 10 years again.
And that's our recommendation.
So moved.
Councilor Jameson, we have seconder.
Second.
Blackened, so any further discussion then on the motions? We have 10 years on this loan. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion's carried. Okay, thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, for all your work on that and. Okay, let's move on. We have 3 letters of correspondence, if everybody's using the most up-to-date. Okay, the first one you'll see is the International Network of Michelin Cities, and we've had a request before us from the County of Kings that we should consider joining this alliance and our network, and it costs roughly $1,500. And I'm not sure exactly what it gets us, but it gets us the opportunity to attend these conferences throughout the world, wherever there are mission plants. And I think those are all free.
We just gotta pay to get there.
Yeah, so thoughts?
I'm a no.
I'm on his side.
Okay. Well, Chris didn't say no. Yeah, no,
I just don't see the value in it, like 1,500 a year to possibly go to a conference that we probably never will go to.
My son works for Michigan, so I may decide to declare a conflict of interest.
Okay,
I expect
Want to do that?
that quite a bit.
yeah. Any other thoughts? So we should have a motion, and so it shouldn't be to say no, but it should perhaps, if we don't want to say yes, we decline at this time and just, yeah, okay? To be less negative and positive. So I'll leave that out there with whoever may want to make a motion.
I do believe that it's not acceptable to make a negative motion,
That's what I'm telling you.
so I will make the motion that we do this.
We decline at this time.
Yeah, well,
Or, oh, okay, you want to make a
Well,
motion to
come
proceed?
down.
Proceed with it, and then we'll, if you.
Okay.
I can make a motion, and still vote against it.
That's right. Okay, so we have a motion to
Join this.
join the network. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Councilor Sereno. And any further discussion? How about all those in favor say yes? And any contrary-minded?
No, I'm staying.
And we have one,
Abstention.
so 4 against. Did you guys want your, no, I'm against. Go in there, yeah. Okay.
I
So,
do. Something I do, I want my name on there, how it is, if I vote against it, yes, so
well, we
yes.
could just unanimously say that it's
With the.
with one, and you make note of
Yeah.
Okay? So,
I will say there are a number of Michelin homes in town, and it's a good conference they go to. My son attends it, but I get all the information back from him, so.
And we do have, so the county does attend, and I believe Kentville has
Kentville,
attended
yeah.
in the past, and I think they bring it back and share the information, so it's not as if we're completely distancing ourselves, we're learning through others.
We're welcoming the learning
Yes,
experience.
correct.
I don't know how regular it's been, but there's been a few times where Michelin and the municipalities have gotten together and had kind of just a joint sharing session and talk about those things that are of interest in the community, so.
Good company.
No question.
Yeah.
It's just not right for us at this time. So we're sure it'll be asked and that will be our response. Okay, let's move on to the Morton Road Sand Pit expansion. We've been asked if we have any issues with this.
It's under jurisdiction.
It's out of our jurisdiction.
Exactly.
Yeah, so like, why are we even? Okay.
Well, that's not uncommon. Usually it happens when there's something a little closer.
Okay.
Morton's a little further away. It's but it is in the county. And I think these people felt obligated, maybe even required to reach out to us on this. So
Well, they don't.
they did, they're doing their due diligence and we should do ours by saying whether or not we have any issues.
They were probably, my best guess, Kenny was probably told to seek the approval of as many municipalities in your area that you can. So,
Yeah. I am not aware of any, if the municipality or anybody in the community is against this, and I don't know if anybody else has heard anything, if you guys.
First time hearing about it.
Yeah,
It's a decision for James County.
yeah, yeah. So any suggestions, thoughts, how we should respond? We should. We have Councilor Klein.
So I guess the only question is, are we a consumer of their product?
They do construction sand, anybody that builds anything.
Yeah, so
anywhere.
I mean, that's just wanting to make the point that there is an impact perhaps on the downward around this.
Yeah.
My other comment is I read through it and it seemed like they were pretty responsible from the environmental
Yeah.
perspective around how they were, planning to manage the sand. And didn't notice, I have never heard of any problems with it.
I worked with a young fellow when I was younger. And he was younger than I at that time. He's come a long way and he's done a lot of good work in the area and, he has a nice operation up on the side, up on the mountain as well, Gordon. And that pit hasn't been a problem down in Auburn that I'm aware of. And he's moved a lot of product east and west and north and south.
I would have thought if there was any community organization or group that was against this, we probably would have heard or seen something, you know, usually we do get those letters as well. We have in the past, so I don't. So I can, if council wants, I can write it back, tell them we have no issue with it.
I would think that a letter thanking them for the information and wishing them well.
Wish him well and
They're not requesting anything.
I'd say the jurisdiction as we see it is with the county of Kings.
Okay, okay. Do we need a motion on that, or? No, okay, we'll just take direction and, we'll draft the letter to them. And then the third one is, a request for proclamation. And I'm sure I'm gonna butcher that. I really am not aware of the Falun Dafa monthly or month anniversary request for proclamation. Did I say that right?
It sounded.
Sounded like, okay, so we have nobody that's an expert on that. Thoughts on that?
My thought, it's a spiritual organization, and I don't, feel comfortable endorsing any spiritual organization.
Yeah.
Because there's too many of them that they'll be mad at me because it wasn't done.
And if we're gonna support this, I wanna see Merry Christmas on our sign out front and Christmas parade.
Instead of seasonal parades.
Cause we're support one religion, we gotta support them all.
Any other thoughts on this? No? So if it's the wish of council, we're not do anything. That's our, yeah, okay. We had some general consensus on that one. All right, great. Thank you. No further business, so I won't even respond, I guess, is that the direction, I don't even need to do that, they'll just, because we do get a fair number of these. Yes, okay. All righty, so let's call for adjournment.
I'd like to call for adjournment.
And we are so adjourned. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you all.
You guys leave it.